Welcome in Food for Thought. Today, we have Conscious Philosopher, Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, everyone.
Daniel is a scholar of philosophy. He has a very unique perspective. And of course, 2mørVs, my frequent guest. And 2mørVs is an aspiring priest, currently studying in Vienna. Hi, guys. We have an interesting subject that was sparked by a tweet posted by Conscious Philosopher. I will provide the link to the tweet below. Just guys, check it out. It talks about a serious subject of helping out somebody who lost their way, who are close to the final solution. And I was actually touched by that. Daniel wrote, guys, if you are considering suicide, please DM me. I will help you out. And yeah, let's talk about that. So, Daniel, what sparked that tweet?
Well, what sparked that tweet was the suicide by Derek. I think I saw his suicide at 24th of July. But he did it a few days earlier, and I was, sad to see that we didn't interact so much. But from what little we did, I thought he was a very nice guy, and he didn't needed to do that. But I just wanted to help others who were considering it, since I know now that suicide is a grave sin, and I wanted to help others. I received dozens of messages after that, and I tried to help as much as possible by, well, first of all, addressing the problem specifically, and then directing them to the nearest Orthodox church and saying they should talk to the priest and he will probably help. And yeah, that was that.
I've heard about Derek on Twitter, on X, after he took his life, not because of the people who were, let's say, mourning for him, but because of the other group of people who were mocking him, and then also orthodoxy in that context, which infuriated me. I'm pleasantly surprised that people did reach out afterwards to you, Daniel. That's a blessing, I would say. We lack the understanding of what it means to take our own life. Obviously, it's a grave sin. We don't understand that nowadays. We don't even understand the concept of sin anymore. And those people who take their own lives think that, well, my life is awful right now, and if I end my life, then it's not going to be awful anymore. And there's some form of belief behind that. Either you think that after you ended your life, you're going to be with your loved ones, or you think you're just going to be gone, or some variants of that. And I think it's very important to understand that that's not the case, which is also another reason why it's so important to find out which metaphysical construct is closest to the truth, because it determines your actions in serious situations like that. So I have, most probably know that I had a suicide in my family quite recently. My grandmother took her own life at New Year's last year, and so and she did so thinking that she's going to be reunited with my grandfather, her husband, afterwards. I mean, there's other things that led to that as well, obviously, but yeah, it's a harsh topic, and it's something that needs to be talked about, and we need to talk about the things that the implications of it, and the systems that implicate that action would be okay.
I remember the story about your grandmother, and I'm truly sorry that happened. And I remember you asked for a prayer, Marvin.
Yeah, many people reached out afterwards. Like I talked about it on Twitter. I thought about not doing that, but because you can also use even stuff like that for attention, obviously, and I didn't want it to seem that way. But on the other hand, I think only Orthodox mutuals on Twitter, and so anyone reading that can pray for her, and that will make a difference. So I think it was important. And then there was a nun who reached out to me afterwards, who provided me with the canon to Saint Varus, who prayed people out of hell, and who weren't Orthodox. And she also linked me a ancient faith podcast recording or whatever, where they were remembering Father Thomas, and one caller talked about how her sister took her own life, and then in the wake, I think, of the death of also Father Thomas, and her experience with that, and also the visions that she received after the death of both Father Thomas and her sister, which were quite hopeful. So I think it and helped me a lot in that time. So I think it was a good thing to speak about it.
It's a difficult subject. I would like to know a little bit more about the story of Derek that sparked all of it. Conscious Philosopher, if you would like to tell it from the beginning, what happened? Who is Derek?
Derek was a guy who was inquiring into Orthodoxy. I don't know if he became Orthodox after that. I remember reading a story that he killed himself because his girlfriend at the time cheated on him and gaslighting him into believing it was all his fault. And I remember afterwards he posted a tree where they kissed for the first time, and I didn't think it was that big deal at the time. It's just a picture. But afterwards, reading it, it's so dark I can't believe it. So I posted his tweet saying that we pray for him, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'll miss you." And a lot of people there said, "I will pray for him. I will pray for him," and I thought it was a very good thing. But we had a few individuals, problematic individuals, who were happy that he died, and I couldn't believe it. I blocked all of them, and I think his tweet about that gained 1.2 million views in about a few days. And I went to the quote tweet and read some of the most nastiest comments I watched on all 3 years I'm on Twitter. I can't believe that someone is happy that someone killed himself, no matter what reason. But yeah, I still can't believe that those people exist. But we should pray for them as well.
I was trying to think of the lesson what lesson is in that? Because being mocked after you're gone, but that mockery of the actions of the past, their example and their lesson, what the others will say about you, they're like the mirror. If you guys considering the final solution, here what will happen to you, which is kind of cynical, cruel picture of our Twitter space, let's say.
I think that wouldn't make much of a difference though, because if you take your own life, you already think that I mean, it's a bit watered down, but that the whole world is against you. So I don't think it stops people from killing themselves if they think that they are going to be mocked afterwards, because they probably didn't have much support in their perceived reality, much support beforehand. And I've seen enough of Derek's tweets before he took his life to say that he knew that he had support, but I mean, obviously also didn't feel like it was enough, though that's a problematic phrasing, because if you think that someone who's supposed to help or who wants to help you can't help with a specific thing that you need help with, then it doesn't matter how much effort they put in. Like if you, I don't know, if you ask a baker to put out a fire for you or whatever. I mean, not the best example, but you get my point. Like Akira the Don made a song with Jordan Peterson about suicide, and Jordan said that the best advice that someone gave him about suicide was that you can always commit suicide tomorrow, and you can put it off. So just put it off and then put it off some more, because there's a lot of things that could technically make things better. But another problem with suicidality, like suicidal thoughts, is that you partly don't want things to be better, because that's also frightening. So we settle in our sadness.
I can dive into my own personal experience. Like long time ago, when I was very young, the emotions that I experienced were extremely powerful, and they were everything that existed. All of it were just this negative fire that burned inside. And I contemplated ending it all. I did not think about public appearances. I did not think about being with the loved ones in the end. The only motivation there was, it's enough. I want it to stop. And I want to have power over my own actions. I wanted to be the powerful one who ends it. Somehow, thoughts like that, I now see that those are just excuses, protection mechanism. It's an illusion of power. Reality is that it's a weakness. Yeah. The powerful thing would be to find a solution out of this difficult situation.
Or at least endure it.
Yeah, stoically. Shut out Socrates. Danielle, how are you doing there? Like, would you like to contribute to that?
I think you mentioned all of what I was planning to say, but I think that just sometimes it's, as you said, you don't feel you feel emptiness. It's like you lack something, and you try with everything you want to fill that hole inside of you, as to, so to speak. But it's just like it's always present there. no matter what you do. And then from that comes sadness, and it just gets worse and worse, and you want to end it all. For those who mocked his death, I saw some person said, every time someone tries to inquire into orthodoxy, they commit suicide. And he used his suicide to attack orthodoxy. He was Protestant, I think Lutheran or something. And I tweeted him saying, like, you shouldn't use that poor guy's death to attack orthodoxy, even though you hate it. And I said, you should get your account suspended, because this is not the first time he's done something like that. And to my surprise, a few days later, he did get his account suspended. Some people said, like, yo, you want to silence the others. No, I just want people to be nice to each other. It's a simple courtesy, not.
I agree.
There's a few lines that you just shouldn't step over. I mean, if someone kills themselves, you don't use that for your own gain. If you know, I'm not a fan of other religions, but if someone of another religion kills himself, I'm not going to use that as like powder or like bullets against that religion, because it also doesn't work that way. I mean, you can maybe make an argument against certain worldviews that allow suicide just because of their system, but I don't think that it makes sense, because no one kills himself because he requires into orthodoxy. I don't think people would even kill themselves because they inquire into like what Calvinism, where you think that everything's predetermined. There's always a way to rationalize things to one end or another. So if your argument is against orthodoxy, then make an argumentation against orthodoxy from a theological standpoint, and not from something that's technically unrelated to the core of orthodoxy. Same with all the other religions.
I have a memory when I was 16, and kind of estranged from my roots. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I was baptized when I was 2 years old. But we did not go to church every Sunday. Religion was not present very much because we lived in a village, and the nearest church was like a half an hour drive by car, or like 1 hour drive by bus. And that luxury was not accessible to us somehow. It was even expensive to go to church. But when I was a teenager, I moved out and I lived in the city where the church was just like foot distance, like we could go there. And I did. I went into the church and was like, well, wow, I haven't been here in ages. Let me check this out. And I was deeply depressed at the time. Deeply. And I had been contemplating suicide as well, because I was like, well, I can end it all right now. But let me check out the orthodoxy first. I'm coming in the kind of after the service, and I see 2 queues. And one is a long, long queue to the confession booth. and one is a super short queue to the confession booth. And I was like, the underdog priest, that's the one I need. And so I queued up in the shortest queue, and I go in. Like I didn't have to wait for a long time. It's not like that elite priest who has a long line. And the booth is very short, well, not short, small. So it's like really confound space. It's smaller than an average elevator. It's like standing there, and there is a huge, tall, blonde priest with blue eyes who is about 22 years old, like super young. And I was like, wow, a character from a Japanese animation who is a priest. Like, to me, in my brain, things did not compute at all. And then he takes out a handkerchief and blows his nose right in front of me. And I was like, that's rude. I was like, so people of God get sick, ill? And he's like, yeah, we are humans. We get sick. It's okay. And we started having a conversation. Absolutely amazing human being. He was a student still, but for the summer, he and his wife were sent to a place called Kherson, a city at the south of Ukraine, from Kiev. So in Kiev, people had a view of my city that it's a village just with bigger population. And we started having a conversation. Turns out we both read same books on philosophy. We both explored different branches, and Christianity was somehow the closest. I must say that meeting him and his wife Mary was the most transformative experience of my life. They saved me. Like I can honestly confess it. That couple saved me back in the day. But I'm coming back to the idea that we are just people. And people are different. So I guess Derek did not meet the right mentors closer to his home, because Twitter crowd is not the same. It's very important to have a conversation one-on-one with somebody. Yeah, that's my insight. What do you guys think?
I had one person who sent me a message, a long message, and I was sleeping at the time. I got up and went to work, and I checked it, and I see it's like he was thinking about suicide and all of that. And I as quickly as I could, I responded it, and no response from him. And I was like praying to God, please God, let him be all right. And I think one day later he responded like, thank you very much for responding. It helped me, and I was so relieved to see this. I cannot explain.
We say that suicide, I don't know if that's word by word doctrine, but something like that's the sentiment. Suicide is a unforgivable sin. I think I think not because God can't forgive. So, I mean, obviously he can do what he wants, but because you can't repent from it. So you have life where it's like that's change, and then you have death, and death is stale and unchanging, like per definition. And if you take your own life, you take from yourself the opportunity to recontemplate and to change out of the headspace that you were in before you took your life. And I think that's what makes the situation hopeless on the one hand, because no one will have the opportunity in death to repent from their decision. But in another sense, it leaves open the possibility for God to forgive what you did, because God knows the circumstances. And so what we know is that someone took their own life, but we don't know the entirety of the events that led to that, and also not the mental disposition of the person who took their own life. So because I don't know much about Derek, I'm gonna take my grandmother as an example. Like she was very sick, bodily and also mentally, because she had been abused very badly from the point that she was born by her father, and that was so bad that her whole body was deformed because of the abuse. And so she didn't learn to cope with the world in a way that lets you see it as it is, but she rather she made it fit so that she wouldn't be able to be blamed for things, because when she was blamed for things as a kid, that's when she was basically tortured. And so if your mental state doesn't allow you to make a autonomous decision on this, then I don't think that it's gonna be counted as a sin on your part, not the same way that someone who is fully conscious in that decision would be guilty of that sin. I mean, another question is anyone who takes their own life really fully conscious? I think that's another discussion to have, but still, I think that difference definitely exists. And so when we, especially as people who condemn suicide as a grave sin, think about people who did commit suicide, that's another example of how we shouldn't make ourselves the judge of a situation that we have not at all enough insight in to be the judge. I mean, we're called not to judge at all by Christ, but this is, I think this is a specific example for why we don't even qualify as a judge.
2mørVs, I have a question here. I might misread your story somehow. It seems to me that your grandmother might have had a mindset that she does an honorable thing.
No, she doesn't. She didn't. Like
okay,
I read the letter. No problem. I read the letter, and I heard the messages that she left. So she didn't think of it as an honorable thing. She thought it was her only way to stay free let's say. There are dynamics that I can't get into because it involves my family members, and I don't want to expose it.
I do understand freedom and agency over your actions. Like, this is my decision, and my decision is freedom.
But that's
I understand that, actually.
But I have to condemn that because it's satanic. So if you're making, be it as informed or not, ill-informed as it is, you are making the decision to take something from you that's not yours to begin with. You didn't give yourself life, so it's not yours to take it. It's not your decision if you're gonna be in the situation that it is imposed upon you. So yeah, that's like Satan does that. Satan thinks, I don't have to endure this, I don't have to do this, I don't have to be in the position that I'm in. And so it's ultimately satanic to think of yourself to have that agency.
I understand. Our life is given us by divine force. It's not the parents, because I can also cite Ivan Grozny, who killed his own son. And he said, I gave you life, and so I have the right to take it from you. And he doesn't. He is not the one who gave his son life, not also the mother. It's life comes as a divine kind of intervention. Here is like his divine power that gave life to that being. Divine intervention, that's the thing that can take it away or has the right to. But it's not up to us, and up to us is to fight. But let me post another question. There was a movie with Bruce Willis. Forgive me, guys, I forgot how it was called. So he had to sacrifice his life with his team. He had to go into a spaceship and blow up an asteroid. But it was a kamikaze mission.
Is that Deep Impact or something like that?
I don't remember the name.
I know the movie.
It was like a slow-mo Bruce Willis walking with his team. They were like astronauts. I don't remember how the movie is called. Guys, please write in the comments. I like brain fart. I beg you for reading this. And so like they knew that's the final mission, and they have to go, and their action would save the entire planet. And this was not a suicide. This was the sacrifice. They sacrificed their life in order to save lives of others, or even not to go far. Our beloved Spock from the old series, so Leonard Nimoy Spock, the way he sacrificed his life. He went into a chamber with like a radioactive chamber in order to save the entire ship. And he said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So he goes and he sacrificed his life to save others. And so it's not a suicide in that case, right? Even though a person actually steps into burning volcano, actually, like
I wouldn't call that suicide. I mean, it's an action. It's sacrifice. You sacrifice your life for someone else. But in suicide, we don't. We take our life because of whatever circumstance meanly said displeases us. So Derek, whom I pray for, but Derek was deeply unhappy with the situation that he was in, and he decided that he was gonna end being in that situation. As understandable as that might be, that's still that's not a sacrifice. I mean, maybe it's a sacrifice, like you're sacrificing your life for yourself, let's say, or you think you do that. But that's not sacrifice, I would say.
Well, basically, when you sacrifice yourself, you're doing it out of love. You place someone above yourself, and you transcend that egoistical kind of view that only your life matters, or you are the most important person in the world. And I think when they do that, they're similar to Christ, who sacrificed himself on the cross. That's the greatest sacrifice of all of them. You are doing it out of love, not just to escape this world or to end it all. You are placing, as I said, others above yourself, and that's virtuous, not a sin. That's a virtue. So that's one way to look at the difference between the two.
That's again, I think, why it's so important to solve the question of which value system is primary, because I don't know, you debate the topic of suicide with someone who hasn't ascribed themselves to Christianity, but to some other system, and they're gonna find some justification why it's okay, and they're gonna say, yeah, well, people who sacrifice themselves are unhappy with the situation and they are ending their life to change that situation, and that's the same thing that people who kill themselves do. But if you have a framework that puts things in the right perspective, then you can't make that, like, you can't confuse things in the same way. And that's, I think, why a discussion about suicide in a general sense always will have to become a discussion about religion, because that's the only thing that can give you one or the other moral framework to assess the situation in one way or another. And then it's important to find, like, to compare these different value systems, because different value systems lead to different results. That's very basic. People don't, like, modern people don't want to do that, because they want to be in this place where they say, like, your way or my way, and it's just my interpretation and all that stuff. And I mean, there's even value in that position, because it allows you to talk to people who have different beliefs than you have. But it's ultimately also harmful if you overdo it, like if you do that too much, because there is right and wrong, and some things are more correct than others, and it makes a difference which thing is more correct than the other, because it determines if you're acting correctly or not.
What you just said, that subjectivism, which is so much present in modern day's world, is because of people's fear to be wrong, because they know there is a moral standard above them, and possibly they know that there is a God who is going to judge them at the end, and they fear him. And so they say, okay, we are going to abandon him, and all this idea of moral objectivism, absolutism, and all that, we are going to be our own judges. And in that way, they are trying to escape that judgment, but in the end, it's going to come again, and they are going to face it. And I think it's fear and ignorance. Both factors are present in that.
In the same breath, they also replace God or the highest value with another highest value. It's not God's law or God's words or whatever. It's what acceptance and tolerance, for example, which are placed above the will of God. So I totally agree with you. I just think that the next step in that is then to find another highest value, because people can't live. That's one of the reasons why I like Nietzsche so much, because he understood that people can't live without some form of value system.
And they put themselves in the place of God. It's like an idol. It's like, all I do is right. I'm the most important person in the world, and etc., etc. But you have to understand there are others people, and that way of thinking is not going to help you in the world. Yeah, maybe for some time, but eventually the consequences of your actions are going to catch up on you.
I was thinking about society. It's based on fantasy story. There was a land that our discoverers visited, and the tradition in a tribe was that all the elderly people were kind of sent to die, and the honorable thing was to serve the society. And the moment you cannot serve the society, the only service you can give is not to be a burden on society. So every elderly relative was put on an ice kind of floating thing and sent away to Antarctica. It's a fictional story, but it made me think about what society is, because we don't understand what service is. Sometimes being a burden on society is your service to society. Being somebody who others can take care of, it's like every day this will be one person who will take care of you, who will wash you, who will clean you up, and that will give meaning to their life, taking care of you. And that's a part of it. We cannot be a society that has to kill off everybody who is no longer kind of useful. Be a useful person, then you have meaning. Sometimes the usefulness is being a teacher to others, a teacher of kindness, a teacher of compassion, a teacher of care. And I witnessed elderly people saying, I want to die because I don't want to be a burden for my relatives. And I hated that, because that's not up to them. And those thoughts kind of still keep plugging me, but it's also not up to me to force people. It's like it's not my right. I cannot force people to choose what they choose. Yeah.
You have a purpose. It's like every day you walk on the street, you meet people, you may compliment them, and that might make their day better, or you can give money to charity and help someone else. It's like these little details that you might not notice that can help a society, and people tend to not focus on that. It's like you have to do something grandiose, or you are useless. And I think that that kind of thinking is dangerous, and it's poisonous, and it's ever present in today's society. And
I agree with you, Daniel. We are valuable. It doesn't matter what age we are, all of us. It doesn't matter if you are mentally ill, if you are incapacitated, even if we are in a vegetative state. We're still valuable. And yeah, it's important to remember just that, even.
It's always important to remember you are made in God's image. You have intrinsic value, no matter what. And that doesn't change with age, with maybe you have arm or legs amputated. It doesn't matter. You are made in His image, and He loves you. And if I remember the passage correctly, for God loved the world so much that He gave His only Son, that anyone who believes in Him will not perish but have everlasting life. And it shows you that God loves you no matter what. He doesn't see you for your failures, for your something you did wrong. He sees you for who you are, and He wants to help you to overcome all of the troubles and to make you, how to say this, to transcend that problems you have and to make to become much better than you were at the beginning. And I heard people say that when you at the end of the ages, when God will come to judge the world, that people who will resurrect and be with Him will be even to the higher position that Adam was in the first place when God created him. So you have value in you, and that cannot be taken away from you no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously true. Obvious to us because we believe in it. But also I think obvious to everyone. I don't like we try very hard to normalize things that shouldn't be normalized. If you look at Canada, for example, with their assisted suicide program, that's so evil. I think in 2021, I attended a March for Life in Vienna, and I met very interesting people there. And one of them talked about assisted suicide as well, and they said if we tear down this barrier, then we are going to develop into exactly what you laid out earlier, that you have, like, you don't, let's say you don't make money anymore, you cost more than you make or something like that, and so you lost your value as a human being. And it's like right now we're at that point where I mean, I think we have surpassed it, but let's say right now we're at that point where you're like, oh, your existence is determined by so much suffering. That means you should be able to take your life. Here's a humane way to do it. That'll be better for you, but it'll very, very rapidly develop into disposing of people who cost. That's a very materialist approach to it. Some people would say it's a capitalistic approach to it. I don't like to use that word in this in this context, because I think it sounds too communistic. But it's still like, that's like, you think your value is determined by how much money you bring to the table, or something like that. And you can only think that if you deny the value of life itself. And the idea that, like, we have intrinsic value is also, I think that Jordan Peterson talked about this in one of his Q&As many years ago, where he said that that at the beginning, he didn't say it like that, but that's what I make of it. At the beginning of everything, there must have been a question. Like God must have stood before a question, even if it's a rhetorical question. And that question is, should existence exist or should it not exist? And the fact that he said, yes, that's a loving decision. And B, that means that everything that exists, it's good that it exists, or at least it's better for it to exist than to not exist. I mean, you can cancel that out by I think, like the bit about the millstone, where like those who lead the little children astray, it would be better for them to never have existed at all. But I don't think that that's talking about the same thing. Yeah.
I wanted to bring in the story that actually flashed before my eyes as you were talking about money is not that determines your usefulness, is not that determines of who you are in society. There was this famous movie by Roman Polanski called The Pianist, and there was a scene in Warsaw. So World War II, Warsaw, completely destroyed, and a German officer enters a building and he sees absolutely miserable, sick, skinny human being whose hands are shaking. And he asks, "Wer sind Sie? Was machen Sie da?" So basically, who are you? What are you doing here? And then he proceeds to ask who you are and how you're useful. And the guy says, "I'm a pianist." So he's like, "Yeah, show me." And then that sick man sits down, he crunches in front of a piano, and he starts playing. And that absolutely brilliantly executed scene. The piano player was not useful in any way. Like, he was just not a useful creature. He was sick. It looked like his existence would cost to keep him alive. Like, he's just a burden on society because he's like, and then he plays this beautiful melody, and you could see that the officer had flashbacks into his childhood where he tried to play a piano and he could not. Probably was punished for not being able to play a piano. Like, he is bewildered by the talent and he lets the pianist go. And that was based on a true story. The movie was shot from diaries of a living human being who was let go, who was saved because he was just able to play a musical instrument better than the officer who was determining his life, actually. And to me, it's a constant reminder. I keep rewatching that scene. I will provide the link below, guys. I just check it out. That clip is famous. It's just like not the movie, but the clip of the pianist. We are more important. Yeah.
I don't think that this solves the problem entirely, but it does to a degree. So we get away from the idea that your life only has value if you can contribute something that's financially lucrative. I mean, obviously, piano playing can also be financially lucrative, but generally, artists are viewed as maybe more often a burden, a financial burden, than they are than they give back money to the world. And so something like that teaches us, I think, that there's value in immaterial things. And that's why it doesn't solve the problem entirely, because I mean, I'm quite certain I do that. I also try to justify my existence through the art that I make. And there's always a way in which that is legitimate, but not to the full extent. Like if I was, God forbid, deprived of any way to create new music, my life would maybe feel a little more pointless, but it's not meaningless at all, and it doesn't deprive me of my intrinsic value that I inherited from God.
Vincent van Gogh, a very famous painter, huge in the realm of art. He committed suicide. He died poor, misunderstood, and feeling unloved by society, thinking his art has no value. It's a constant reminder that you don't know people, they don't know their value. And they take a decision not believing that they will be understood. Like the level of suicide among brilliant, talented people is extremely high. And I can't understand it.
Because it doesn't justify you. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be the greatest singer or whatever, but that ultimately also doesn't make us okay. Let's say it doesn't fix us. It's, I mean, we tend to admire people, especially as artists. We tend to admire people who made it, and we also tend to think that would solve our problems, but it wouldn't, because the problem of life still is there. Like maybe let's say you have money, a lot, and you don't have to worry about what you're gonna eat the next day. That's a good thing. That's one sorrow lifted off your shoulder. But if we, I mean, we should technically expand on that, but if we lose our connection to God, then it doesn't matter what we do, and it doesn't matter what we achieve. It will feel pointless, and it won't make us happy, and it leads us to death.
To add to that, I remember hearing a quote. Every heart has a hole in it in the shape of God. Then only God can fill. And people try to fill it with money, with women, with men, with a lot of things, but that hole is infinitely big, and only God can fill it. And people try with this hedonism, with pleasures, to try to either forget about it or to fill that hole, but eventually they will find out that it's pointless, that it cannot be done, or they are just going to until their death to numb themselves in pleasures. But each time they do that, it will take more and more and more pleasure to reach. It's like drugs. Each time you take it, it will take more and more to reach the same level of high. And people don't understand that. They will think, yeah, this will what makes me good is important, and so on. But they do not understand that suffering, even though we perceive it as bad, can be used for a greater good. It can be used for you to become a better person, to transcend who are you now, to learn a lesson, and so on.
So the lessons from Saint Augustine, who went through through a huge ringer of hedonism and chose God. I actually inspired by Saint Paul. It's like I really like that story. It's like highly kind of relatable Saint Augustine. Yeah. Guys, would you like to have closing statements before we wrap up? 2mørVs?
I'll try. I mean, don't kill yourself. I think that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not that much of a rational decision if you get to that place. But I think that there is responsibility in I don't think that this will help people, but I think there is responsibility in finding out exactly what you believe and what makes you think that the decisions that you're going to take are going to be a solution to the problems that you're facing. Because if any decision that you make is definitely at least an implicit statement about what you believe about the world. And if you think that suicide is the solution to your problems, even if you say that you believe in God, your actions show otherwise. And maybe that's a little harsh, but it's still the case. And so I think there's plenty of ways in which you can solve problems, even on a secular level. Like, we have a lot of medication, and yeah, they have side effects, and some of them don't work on some people, but I'm quite certain that some of it will work. And even if you say, I don't want to be depending on medication, yeah, maybe you don't have to for the rest of your life. But if you break your arm, you're gonna have to have it like in a cast. So it's gonna take some support. So it's people like to say, like, a solution is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and most of the time that's true. And there's good arguments for religions. There's good arguments especially for Orthodox Christianity, and the idea that well, if there are such good arguments for it, why isn't everyone Orthodox yet? I don't think that that's an argument, because I think that everyone knows that we're not always intellectually honest, let's say. So we oftentimes just believe what we want to believe because it allows us to do the things that we want to do. But like, life or death is, you shouldn't play with that. You should be dead serious about that, and be capable of assessing the situation in a way that maybe makes you feel uncomfortable, but also allows you to assess it properly. So I'm not qualified to help people in such situations at all. I'm definitely willing to try. So if someone is feeling down and thinks they want to reach out to me, I'm very much happy if you do, and I'm very much open to that. And I will put a lot of time and effort into helping you for sure. Even though I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a priest, I'm none of these things. And I also don't have such a good track record given my family history. But still, like don't kill yourself. That's not a good idea. That's a bad idea. Definitely, no matter what you're going through, that's a bad idea, and it's not gonna. I'm dead serious. It's not gonna make anything better. It's like at best you're just gonna stay where you are, and at worst it's gonna get much worse. But it's not going to solve your problems. Why would it? Makes no sense whatsoever.
I like from that permanent solution for a temporary problem, and focusing on the temporary. You got the power to fix what is temporary. Temporary means it will end. Don't worry. Yes, that's the thing. Temporary.
Even if it wouldn't end, like you still, I mean, maybe like we have a Twitter mutual who lost, I think, his legs in an accident. You're not gonna solve that. Like the legs are gone. And there's other injuries that you like that can be inflicted upon you. It's not like every solution can be solved properly, but just because you can't solve it, that still doesn't give you a right or justification to end it.
So it's pick up your cross and bear it, a fundamental Christian teaching.
Yeah. If somebody lost legs, it's difficult to carry the cross, but you can still do it. Okay, Daniel, what's your closing statement?
So it's going to be a quick one. So always remember that even during the heaviest of storms, the sun is going to come out again. You know, it may be rough, it may last long, but at the end the sun is going to come out again. And always remember that whatever you're doing, it echoes in eternity. It will be listed when you come before God at the end, when he comes to judge. So no action is just a temporary one. I did that. You forget about that, but God is not going to forget about that. You give money to charity. He said, "Oh, you give the money to charity, you help someone even after you forget." No matter what, always remember that God loves you and He's with you until the end of the ages. He promised us that. And I think that after His resurrection, we can 100% trust His words. God loves you so much that He gave His only Son. So if He's going to go that far, it means that He loves you so much, and you have an intrinsic worth in you that cannot be taken away no matter what. And as I said, you have to, as Christ said, pick up your cross and follow Him. It may be difficult, it may be hard, but as one meme said, suffering builds character. And I think it's true, even though it is used for something else. But the meaning of the meme is still very relevant. So it might be unpleasant for you right now, but you can always learn from it, grow from it. While the pleasure, because people numbed themselves with it, at the time you will become suicidal. You will not care for anything. You will take what you have for granted, like family, like friends, or best friends, or even your partner. It is always important to remember that bad things are going to end. Maybe not now, maybe not tomorrow, but they will. And I think Nietzsche said that the man who has why can withstand anyhow or something like that. You have to have a reason other than yourself to go through life. Maybe it's a family, maybe it's a partner or whatever. But you always have to remember they depend on you, same as you depend on them. So we are all connected in that sense. So people will not be better without you. In fact, your world will lose very much if you are gone. And as I said, your value is intrinsic. It doesn't matter if you have money or not. It's not that isn't the measure of your worth. You are not more important than others. We all have, I think, the same amount, if you can say that, the same amount of worth. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Beautiful. Thank you. I wanted to say that the most valuable people in my life, they had the least amount of money. And the people I met who ended their lives, those are mostly people who were not understood by others. So being understood by others is really important. If you are in pain, find people who will understand you. That's what happened to me. Like when I was in pain, when I was ostracized and misunderstood, I happened to meet the couple in the Orthodox Church. The husband was a priest. His wife was Mother Mary. Like literally her name was Mary. And they saved me by hearing me out, understanding where I'm coming from. And just that already meant the world to me. And I try to preach it till this day, understanding others and valuing others. Yeah, with that, I would like to say that this episode of Food for Thought is dedicated to Derek. His life is meaningful. And with that, I would like to thank my guests, Daniel and Marvin. Thank you, guys. And bye.
I'd like to suggest 2 songs that I think have a wonderful message. One is Whispers in the Dark by Skillet.
Mm-hmm.
And one is, it's called, I think, Simone's Song. It's from the Third Librarian movie. The message behind those songs are very beautiful and very important. I would suggest all people to listen to them.
Yeah, check them out. I will provide the links below.